Welcome, my name is Ellis Davis and I'm the marketing content writer here at SBC. Today I have the honour of being joined by a man who goes by many names. Some call him the father of first-person shooters, some know him simply as the man with the most lavish hair in gaming. Today he will go by John Romero, the iconic game programmer, game designer and level designer on video game classics such as Doom, Wolfenstein 3D and Quake. John will be appearing as an exclusive keynote at the upcoming CasinoBeats Summit this May to detail his experience crafting blockbuster games and explaining how all of this can be applied to the world of online casinos. So John, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. So I guess we'll just start off for the viewers who may not be aware. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick rundown of your career, your games you've helped create and so forth.
Yeah. I've made about 180 games and created the first-person shooter genre, starting officially, I'd say, with Wolfenstein 3D, and then evolving it pretty quickly with Doom the following year, and then kind of providing the base for a lot of today's shooters with Quake in 1996. So those games have, Doom is still going strong today. I've made lots of other games. I made a game that had 25 million monthly players, but unless you're a Facebook game player, you wouldn't know about it. But I've done MMOs, I've done cell phone games, I've done just everything pretty much that there is to do. And I'm currently working on a pretty big FPS right now with a big publishing partner, and I got a team of 60 people, and I've been working on it for a while now. It's pretty cool.
That sounds fantastic. And it's interesting for you to say that you've worked on such a variety of different formats of games, whether it be first-person shooters or MMOs or Facebook games. All of them kind of harness such specific game mechanics. Could you maybe walk us through some of the most defining game mechanics you've included or created, such as the Doom engine?
Well, the Doom engine's a technology that we created for Doom, which was then used for Doom 2, Heretic, Hexen, and then we wrote a whole new game engine for Quake, which then was used in lots of games like Half-Life and Team Fortress and Portal, etc. We started the concept of a game engine with Commander Keen in 1990 because we needed to make games quickly. So we did 3 games in 3 months, and we did that because we made an engine that we could just pump data into to make multiple different games, and that worked out really well. And then in 1991, we were just starting our second trilogy of Commander Keen games, and that's when we started licensing our technology, our engine, and that was the first engine license in the summer of 1991, which then kicked off all of the engine licensing biz that you see today. That at this point is like it's the Unreal technology, Unreal Engine, and Unity are the 2 biggest ones. There's lots of other engines out there too, but those 2 are the 2 biggest competitors in for commercial game engines, and we're using Unreal 5 right now for my game. But yeah, we started that in 1991, licensing technology. We started multiplayer, high-speed multiplayer deathmatch gaming in 1993 with Doom. That was the first time that anyone had played a game where you're shooting someone else in the face at high speed. There were slower games before that, pretty slow, not smooth movement or anything, but it really took game playing to the next level when we added multiplayer with Doom, and that was mostly on a local area network and some modem. But then with Quake, then we added internet gameplay, and then the whole world could play with each other at any time, and that became massive. We started esports with Doom, and then it really exploded with Quake. We started modding with Doom, so people could mod games. And we started basically allowing speedrunning with Doom, where players can try and get through get through the game or part of the game, one of the levels or whatever, at super high speed. They can record the gameplay and play it back to prove that they did it. And immediately in 1994, websites sprung up to just host speedrun demos, and they're still around today. So lots of speedrunning is happening. If you go on YouTube and you just type in speedrun, you'll find that people are speedrunning every single game. that exists basically. Um, so yeah, we've done a lot, and our games were basically free. The first episode was free, so we put out our stuff. So if people liked it, they didn't have to, they didn't have to pay for it if they don't like it. If they do like it, they can pay for the rest of it if they want more of it. Otherwise, they can just have fun and give it to somebody else to share. So it was really the quality of our free games forced the rest of the industry to provide CD-ROM demos, like cover disc demos and downloadable demos for the rest of the industry from 1994 onward.
Yeah, I was actually really quite shocked when doing my most recent blog post on your appearance, just how many kind of innovations you brought into the gaming industry, as you say, whether it's speedrunning, multiplayer. I mean, even just bringing historical context like World War II into Wolfenstein. There's
Yeah.
so many things that had never really happened before. So, kind of on that topic, what do you think, in your personal opinion, makes such a successful game? Is it the technological innovations? Is it the storyline? Is it kind of graphics? How do you see this going?
Well, no matter what, a really great game is going to have really great design. It doesn't matter what the graphics look like, it matters how the game plays. Back in the day, back in the earliest parts of the game industry, like 1982 or even a little bit earlier, there was a game called Mule that came out that was just a hit game, just amazing. The graphics were like nothing interesting, but the gameplay itself was incredible. The original Castle Wolfenstein was a huge game. It kicked off the entire stealth genre in 1981, and it was, yeah, it's a classic. It's such a classic. Graphics not that great, you know. And if you keep going forward, sure you can have a mega hit if you have really great graphics, like state of the art graphics plus really great design together. Then you've basically made as good as it gets at that time. But like really, it's down to design to define whether you're going to have a hit or not. If you look at Minecraft, those graphics are not high res, but it has changed the world, right? Minecraft has changed everything. Um, so yeah, it really does come down to design. Graphics are really good, nice to have. And the better they are, the more immersive they can be. But I would say I'm not immersed in Minecraft when I'm playing for 6 hours. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something what we've seen over the last month with a game like Helldivers 2, for example. It's such a
Yeah.
simple game on the surface, but the game design just allows it to kind of really speak for itself, and the simplicity actually works even more for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Helldivers 2 is really great. It really, you basically have to play it co-op. You cannot solo that game.
No,
you know?
absolutely not.
And it is really, really fun. It's really fun to play with someone who's really high level, and they can just call down a really cool super weapon for you. Like if you need the rail gun or something like that, they just call it down and just let you do it. Um, the friendly fire is really great. But it's funny, like when we made Doom in 1993, it was a single player game, it was a co-op game, and it was a deathmatch game. And so you could play it in co-op, and it was super fun in co-op. Like, you could turn on friendly fire if you wanted or not. Like it had tons of options even for the very first high speed multiplayer game.
And as you say, these are core mechanics that have kind of worked themselves into every kind of shooter game now. It's absolutely incredible. And kind of on the topic of those mechanics, obviously a lot of people that will be attending the CasinoBeats Summit will be from game developers, game studios. What guidance would you offer these studios who are seeking to kind of craft their own innovative mechanics for their games?
Well, it depends on the focus of the conference. If we're talking about creating design or designing games for casinos, which is basically badass slot machines, um, which is something I absolutely love playing. Especially when you can get into something like a Wizard of Oz or something, and you can sit in that chair and feel the bass and everything. It's a totally different style of design. It is more like like a lighter touch design than something that is super immersive and heavy like a Helldivers 2. That's what we call destination games, a game where you're going to stay for a long time. Um, the design of a casino game is very much akin to like an arcade game where they need you to keep spinning and they need you to keep feeding it. And so what the player needs to feel is that they're getting bang for the quarter or the buck or whatever they're putting into the machine. They need to get that multimedia response from what they're doing in the game. And the more levels that of intensity that you can get into the design, the more exciting the game gets. Like when you walk into a casino, when you see Wheel of Fortune on the back, those are the ones that are full. Like those are always full because they have a second stage that you hit. Like anytime there's a roll happening because of what's happening on the main thing, you've got a design that's really exciting. I remember I was with my wife at a casino and we were playing Magma, and it's one of these. There's a Chinese company that makes incredible feedback slot machines, and this was just one of them using the same kind of code that they use for a lot of their stuff. They just kind of changed the reels and all that, but it's got neon lights and all that. She got 89 wins in a row on this Magma machine. In fact, the casino dealers were all standing around watching this thing they'd never seen before because it's just Magma. It's just in a constant loop of wins, and it's like if you can do that, it's like that's amazing for a player. And it's like when you're looking at the amount of money that the machine's losing at that point, if you can see, well, the person bet a nickel, you're not losing much at all, right?
But
So it's like go ahead, do 89 wins, not a problem. But for the player, it's like I'm going to keep playing this machine. This is amazing. But
yeah,
feedback is really critical.
absolutely. And is that something you guys at ID Software or whatever company you've been at the time, has feedback always led the direction of your next game or patches, for example?
The mechanics mostly lead the design. So the way that you play and the feel of what's called the core loop of the game, the thing that you're doing over and over again, slots have the same thing. The core loop of that game is the thing that has to feel the best, and you have to have really good feedback in tied to every element of that core loop. And then anytime you're putting something else into the design of the game, you have to ask whether it is feeding the core loop or not. Because if it's not, it's almost like another game. So you always want things feeding into the core loop because it makes every new element more valuable in some way because of what you're doing all the time. So yeah, core loop is the main part of your game, and when you're playing slots, your core loop is spinning, but on top of the spin, you also have what is the track that I'm running? What am I trying to accomplish? Because if you take some of the advanced pinball machine designs, such as like this one called Junkyard, where hey, you're just like slamming a pinball in a pinball machine, except there's an entire story and a narrative that will take you into outer space if you play long enough. And there's lots of mini games on a second screen, and it's a complex game, and it's just pinball. But you can get people really wrapped up. The farther they can get into your narrative, the more that they want to keep spending, the more that they want to unlock new narrative and new things happening in the game. So anytime that you can pull a story together and get players to spend to reveal that story, you're going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something you've definitely seen in the last kind of decade or so, that to kind of innovate games more and more, it's not so much just a mechanic or a storyline. It's interweaving all of these different elements so intricately, so you're kind of progressing at the same time. Which kind of leads me on to the current the current landscape of gaming at the moment. How do you kind of feel about the modern game in 2024?
Oh, it's insane. I mean, there's so much great stuff out there. Um, the thing that's great about gaming, even in the casino biz, is that innovation wins. If you're trying to push forward and make something new, like you're trying to outdo your competitors and you're trying to improve games in general and push forward to a new way of playing games. And when you look at um, the inputs that you have available to you, like that's your limitation. Your limitation is, a mouse and a keyboard. or your limitation is the buttons on your controller and your joysticks, or especially in a slot machine, your limitation is the button that you press to spin. And so the more inputs that you have, the more you can be effective. Like a keyboard has a lot more inputs on it than a controller. Um, but but even with those limitations, what you're displaying on the screen can be something incredible. But the audience is what's critical in your design, right? Like when I went into Facebook design, it was so critical to understand the gaming literacy level of the platform. And that gaming literacy level is critical to the success of your design. And you have to make sure that you're not what we call overthrowing the receiver when you're trying to do something interesting and innovative. If they don't understand it, your design doesn't mean anything. So they need to be able to understand that. And the way that you get people to get to higher levels of understanding is to slowly step them through the current common level of understanding, and then add one little thing to it, and keep them at that level so they're repeating that same thing over and over again, and then go another notch up from there. And then you're starting to teach people how your thing works and how you're designing something new and innovative. Um, in something that they want to tell their friends about. It's like, you would not believe this machine that I played. It has this crazy combo thing that like turns into something else on the screen. Like I can't even describe it. You have to come and see it. That's what you want people to do. You want people to come away from your machine very energized, excited to play it again, but to tell people about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the current a big talking point at the moment from what I've been reading as a gamer is the fear of too much innovation, or kind of following innovative fads to kind of jump on the bandwagon, so to speak. The big one that kind of comes to mind at the moment is the life of live service games. We've seen obviously Destiny do it well, but then you have on the other end of the spectrum games like Suicide Squad that maybe haven't landed correctly. What's your thinking behind kind of chasing fads or innovative mechanics like that?
Well, so live service games are not a fad. They've been around for almost 30 years. If you've played Ultima Online or Meridian 51 or EverQuest or World of Warcraft or Guild Wars, or there's so many MMOs, and they're all service. In fact, their subscription, which to a lot of people was like the only way to play back then, but then they had to shift their business model because people wanted to not spend that much money like in one go at the end of a month or whatever. They'd rather microtrans things. And then that started being a negative. On Facebook, it was all microtrans, but then when you're getting on a computer, microtrans isn't as cool. But I mean, they sell a lot of hats in TF2, so like there's still a lot of business models happening. And World of Warcraft was the one that started innovating with exposing the users to a myriad of ways that they could pay for the game when they wanted to play the game, instead of having this health club membership thing that you forget about that keeps charging you every month, right? It's like I'm going to play this weekend World of Warcraft. I don't know how many hours, but I'm just going to get a WoW token, and I'm just going to use the WoW token to play for X number of hours. And if I want to play some more, I'll just get another token, but I don't need to pay my $15 a month. So like that game has provided many ways to pay for the game itself, to play it. And it's not a free to play, really. I mean, there are some friend, get your friend in here for a short period of time weekends. Sometimes they do that. But live service is really becoming, a model where people are learning that you need to provide players with live service content in events that they want, because they will happily pay for it. If you love a game like Helldivers 2 and they're going to put out a DLC, so like an expansion, you're going to want to buy that expansion. Like I love this game. Why wouldn't I want to play more of the game? I've been playing the same thing over and over again. I'm ready for some new stuff. That's a successful live service model. It's where the players can't wait. There's anticipation. There's this expectation. Like that is a live service model waiting to happen. And that's great. But if you have a game that's just like doesn't know what it's doing or doesn't have a good plan, and the players feel like what they're paying for is barely anything, but they paid too much, they think. Like now you have a bad live service business model. So you have to really make sure that the content that you're designing is stuff that the players want. They need to feel like they're getting something that's better than the previous one. They can't be like less because then it's like, oh, it's going downhill. I'm out of here. Like say World of Warcraft, when they made Wrath of the Lich King, it was incredible. It was better than Burning Crusade. It was it was so good. And it was like it's hard to top that. Legion was really good, but like in between there, it wasn't as great as Wrath. And like that's going to happen. It's not that easy when you have 150 people working on something that it's going to be like the best thing every single time when you kind of have a fixed formula that works with the kind of game that you're making. But live service is something that you know lets players build community. It gets players excited to help other players get into it. And people do like some people, if there's bad battle passes, people won't like it. But if you have really great design for your battle passes, people just love unlocking it, especially if they can do it on their own time and it's not rushing them through, or like you can open up old passes. It's not like locked away forever, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of really design around live service models that are successful depending on the design of the game that you're making. You got to kind of design that model around what the game's about and not just copy some other game's model, because if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and then people just leave. But if you have a model where you're making what people want, you know, that's what you need. That's what you have to do, and that's what's really important. But yeah, if I'm playing a game and I really like it, I will buy everything I can for that game. Like if I like it, and there's very few games I can play that are that all consuming, like I would have done that. I did that actually for Breakpoint, Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And they stopped. They say the game is still running. It's been 5 years since it was released, and it's still running. But they're not ever going to release another expansion. Even before that game, Wildlands, that they released, that came out a year and a half before. It's still running, and they're still kind of updating that one because that's the one that's kind of has more support. But yeah, it's like they will keep games running for a long time if there's enough of a community there, because they need that community to get the next game. If they start shutting it off and you're going to make a new Ghost Recon game, they're going to go, well, you're just going to abandon me on the next one. So, they have to keep it going.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest, errors in the last 10 years was leaving Star Wars Battlefront 2. I thought they just found that place, just the perfect place, and they obviously cut ties of it, which is a shame. But kind of talking about kind of your wider career, you've obviously spent a lot of time working in both smaller indie studios and having worked alongside AAA studios as well. What are the various challenges you found associated with creating new IPs, working at the various studio levels?
Not really any, because my whole career has been mostly around IP creation, like new IPs. So out of all the games that I've made, there are very, very few that were based on existing IP. Like Red Faction. I remade Red Faction for the Nokia N-Gage Taco phone that came out back in 2003. So I made N-Gage there. It was the very first Bluetooth deathmatch on a cell phone. And then right after that, I worked at Midway on Gauntlet, Seven Sorrows. So those were two IPs that I didn't create, that were someone else's property that I like. With Red Faction, it was not creating anything new. It was just making it happen on a phone. But with Gauntlet, it was a whole new chapter of Gauntlet, and it was a totally different thing. We're creating backgrounds for characters and story and our RPG elements, all kinds of stuff. Um, but everything else pretty much is all my IP. I've made my own. All of my stuff is mostly original stuff. So it hasn't been a problem because that's just kind of what I do. Because there's too many ideas. There's too many ideas for stuff that I want to make. And it was like, say, Doom. Doom was an IP that was like great, timeless, inspired a lot of stuff, and Doom was my 90th game. in
Yeah, that's
1993.
mental. How does it feel now, kind of sitting back and being able to watch other studios continue your legacy with your original IPs? You obviously got new Wolfenstein games coming out. You got new
Yeah.
Doom games coming out. How does that feel from the other side, seeing that happen?
Well, it's good. It's great to see it happen in a good way. Like to see that Machine Games has a real handle on the lore and the implementation and the design of Wolfenstein. Like they own it now, really. Like they're great. And that id Software has finally figured out how to get how to make Doom work really, really well, because that was an issue. Trying to bring Doom back, that was not easy, and so it was really cool to see that they put in 7 years to get that, um, to make that game, what it is now. That was a such dedication, and such so there were 4 reboots of that game because they needed to get the essence of Doom correct. And that was very difficult to do because the audience had changed and games had changed, and so they really nailed it, and I was really happy. So I'm very happy with Doom Eternal and the new one that they're making. Um, so yeah,
That's fantastic. Yeah,
yeah, it's great. And Quake, I'm just waiting for Quake reboot to happen
yeah,
because there have been what 6 Quakes now or something, um, 5 Quakes. I mean, it depends on if you count Quake Live, the one that's on the browser,
yeah.
but which is really Quake 3. But yeah, but yeah, Raven made Quake 4, and then there's Quake Champions, which is 5. I'd say 6 or 7 because of Live. That's a lot of Quakes. Um, and I heard rumors that they were talking about doing a reboot of the Lovecraftian original style versus the Strogg. So that would be really cool to have that kick started.
Absolutely. I was just about to. My next question was going to be: was there an IP you've created that you're still waiting for someone to pick up and reimagine, or bring the story forward into the 21st century?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. It's basically I'm just making new stuff. So like the game I'm making right now, brand new IP, created it over the years. Um, you know, so it's all brand new. It's not based off anyone else's stuff. And
That's
that's just kind of what I do. The last big game I was doing was an MMO, and that's all original IP, the whole thing. I had 100 people working for years on that, in my studio. Um, but yeah, it's like that's why I'm just used to making new things because it's just, it's almost like you got to do that to make sure that what you're doing is original and new and today. Or actually, when you're coming up with the game design, you actually have to look into the future several years because that's when it's going to be released. So you have to kind of know what the trends are and what players are doing and how that is extrapolated into the future. Like if you were making a battle royale game after battle royale came out, then you're just too late. So you have to think, what will battle royale turn into? Like what's working with battle royale and how do we make it better and what might happen in the future? Are there any tech changes that we need to be looking at that might affect that? Are there ways that the battle royale style is shaking out? To are there things that other people have done that people hate? Make sure you go in a different direction. Helldivers 2 is such a great example of we're just going to make a solid co-op game. There's like that game doesn't is not like no one's going, holy crap, look at how innovative. It's like, nope, we're solid. We are an incremental step above the original Helldivers. It is such a good game. And they really do have a really good spawn system, intensity of experience, adjust, dynamic intensity system. It's just, yeah, they just do a lot of really good stuff with timers in that game, and it feels really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree more. And the idea of kind of predicting trends and innovating games is something that's such a core belief within the conference agenda at the upcoming CasinoBeats Summit. Um, I remember when Natalie, our conference producer, kind of mentioned your name as a keynote, and I was just as shocked as I was excited that we was able to bring such an iconic name, but also one that is outside of the iGaming and kind of gambling industry. What lessons do you believe the iGaming world can take from the video game world?
Well, I'd say that you have fixed mechanics you can't really change with your slots, right? There's something that everyone knows how to play, and that is critical to success for how slots work. So what you need to do for innovation is to add, I'd say you focus on it the way you focus on a movie. Why is someone watching this movie? Is it because of the director? Usually it's not. Usually it's because there's a really great plot. There's a really great, um, like the genre of the movie. Like like if it's an A23 movie, like it's gonna be terrifying, right? Like it's gonna be a scary movie. You already know what to expect. Um, and so like the genre is important, and then you got to make sure you're true to the genre, and you're pulling players through it. You're going forward. There's progress, and there's lots of different ways to do progress, even when people lose. And so like you want to figure out ways of pulling people back in. Um, you want to have really great like game over screens that make people like want to keep on playing because there's something that they just noticed, or you should like treat it like a movie and pull people through a story and make get them through part of the story quickly, as quick as you can before they start feeling like, okay, I need to focus on this other thing. And if you can give people choices, it's even better. If it's not just the button mash to roll again, but if it's something that they get to make a choice, with a touchscreen, which lots of games do that, but like, can you change the narrative with that instead of just roll another thing? So there's lots of ways that you can like treat it as a different kind of media, even though the interface is the media that people understand. So yeah, there's still lots of places to go. Obviously, the multimedia part of these games has gotten so much better with actual big seats and bass and audio surround and everything. It's so good. Massive screens are my favorite. And when I see innovative stuff, it's great because I notice a lot of innovation. When I'm looking at the game, I'm just like, that's a game company. That's a game company that made that. It's not like the tried and true names of the normal slot makers, but it's like these other third parties are coming in and doing the design. And the audio is so critical. Like the audio design of them is absolutely critical. Like you will be humming the song of a game if you have a catchy tune. And I just love the amp up of the audio when you're playing a game that's got lots of audio amping up to the point where it starts singing. So great.
I mean, the Doom soundtrack is a perfect example of that just metal catchiness and
Yeah.
immersion. It's absolutely correct. And I think something that maybe people don't necessarily always take into consideration is how closely the gaming world and the iGaming world are so parallel. They kind of run in very, very similar circles.
Yeah.
So, we consider your appearance as an out of industry keynote. But what do you feel like you'll be able to bring to game developers, and how can you broaden their horizon as an out of industry expert?
um I think just giving people some ideas for some possible direction. There's already game developers in the field. I think they're already moving in. It's kind of like when Facebook Farmville came out, and those people weren't game developers. They were web devs, and they didn't know how to make a game, but they made something that everybody loved, and then Zynga bought them, and then it's like, this is a formula. Let's go. And then it started getting big, but with that the bigness started attracting the actual game industry to come into the space. And so that's where casino gaming is right now. Like they're attracting game industry companies and design firms that come into the space to try to figure out, how do we innovate? How do we still make it understandable to the player, but move them forward beyond what they expect a slot machine to be? And can we present something that really like hooks them because they're so excited about what they're learning or how the story is moving, or they have these side things and maybe they're building up some credit to like get them out of jail when something bad happens, or there's a lot of cool stuff. Like when you are doing game design for a different kind of platform, you have to think about the platform's strengths, and then you try to make up for its weaknesses with something else. Like, in Vegas, there's this thing called the Sphere, right? And the Sphere is this $2 billion, giant 20,000 seat stadium with an interior that is like fully 360 display with a little bitty like concert, thing at the bottom. And I did a bunch of the initial design of their first experiences with this thing. And it's like, what kind of inputs do we have there? People are just watching it. Well, we're going to let people have phones. They're going to use their phone. Okay, so, but we don't want them staring at their phone. We want them staring up here. How do we make them do something on the phone while we're doing something over here? So, like, all of these thoughts are part of the design process, and you have to come up with something that's interesting. And obviously, it's new. You're in a new, space. You're in a new technology. So you got to like really figure out how do you solve these problems. And casino slots have the same kind of, how do we solve this problem? We got somebody in a seat. First, we want to get them in the seat. What do we show on the screen to get them in the seat? And because you are in competition with everything next to your machine, right? You need to be the machine that blows everybody away. And so how do you do that? How do you do really great attract screens? How do you get people invested into the story as fast as possible? And how do you get them winning and feeling like they're winning and moving forward as fast as possible and kind of invested? And so that's all part of like how you design your slots. And yeah, it's really up to a design team to sit and go like, especially if they know the space really well and there's a shorthand to your dialogue and all that, then you're like, okay, they're going to do the spend, and then they're going to roll, and then we're going to do this, and we need this audio hit here, and then we're going to let them choose this kind of stuff, and like when they choose, we're going to give them a choice, and so it's like it's not like it's not really complex, but there are specific patterns that people respond to that you have to make sure that your design is incorporating while you're trying to push something new in there. So yeah, there's a lot of expectation on how the progress through these designs work, but you kind of know where the space is for innovation and where you can kind of push and do something new. And when you do anything new, people recognize it, because a lot of times people who play slots, they've been playing slots for a long time. They've probably seen a lot, right? So they'll notice you've done something new, and it's like you get their attention. So that attract screen is really a pretty critical part of exposing something that you're doing that none of your neighbors next to you are doing, that makes people want to go and see yours.
Absolutely. And I think especially play engagement at the moment is such a vital thing, because as you say, there's so much competition around. It's about innovating, but it's also not making it too much for someone, so they kind of switch off. So I think striking that balance is really important with innovation.
Yeah, one of the things that's like critical to a gaming to an audience that has literacy for slots, that does not, it can't be that big anyway, because slots are not wildly different. But when you're playing, as an example, when you're playing Facebook games and you are designing a Facebook game, the game that's most popular is critical to your design, because people have an hour during lunch to play your game. They need to slot your game in next to the other games. And if they have to learn a whole new UI to play your game, they're not playing your game. So you have to design everything in the same locations as the best, biggest game. So when they move to your game, it's easy. There's not a mental, there's not something in their head going, it's me kind of a hassle, I have to relearn the layout or whatever. It's like, oh, I already know how to play this game. So like that transference is really important to your design, to make sure that you're doing what the others are doing, but when they get into it, that's the new part. So yeah, the UI is critical as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree more. So just kind of briefly discussing the CasinoBeats Summit. Innovation, as mentioned, is going to be such a prevalent topic across the agenda, and as so many people are going to be from studios or have a role in game development, where do you see the process of game development in the future? Do you see it transforming dramatically? Where do you see it in the next kind of 10 years or so?
Well, game development keeps kind of spreading out. There's where everyone is not just making games in the same genres anymore, like all the time. Like there was a period in the early 2000s or say the 2000s where people felt genreification happening to games. They became a little bit too rigid because of the publishers like demanding that a game fill, stay in its lane kind of thing. And now with the success of something like Minecraft and other games, publishers are like, anything can happen and it might be big. So let's not stop them from innovating. So let them go. So that's why you have like narrative games. That's why the narrative genre has really come back. It used to be adventure games back in the 70s and the 80s, and it's gone through a lot of back in the like it lived in the background for decades because of the shooter prevalence and RTSs and other games that were just like very action oriented and took up shelf space, but like you still had adventures in the background taking a different shape. They were mysteries. They were Nancy Drew, and they were these other cool narrative games. Even surviving through hidden object games. Where they start developing narrative to get players through those screens, and so that had been going on in the background for a long time, and then finally, you have on the PC, you have indies really kind of attacking that space. And Dear Esther was really like the first time people were playing a what they call a walking simulator. But it's like it's a narrative game, and then they start getting really rich. Like What Remains of Edith Finch has got to be one of the coolest narrative games I've ever played, and that came out years ago. But holy crap, it's nuts. But like that's the evolution of that space, and it's taking off. Um, so yeah, the games have gone really wide. When you play, Cart Life or Papers, Please or Her Story, like so different. And some people even question whether these things are games anymore because they're just like that doesn't fit any definition of a genre. That is so new. And that's what's exciting about games is people are always trying new things now, and you can look at almost any of these things and apply them to casino games. You can just take something that you really like and go, how do I get people to spin for that? Like how can I
Yeah,
take a Her Story and get people invested in that thing? Um, do I need to use the traditional, um, presentation of slots? Can I take the presentation of slots and make this happen in there? So it's like as applying these different, it's almost mashup theory, but it's like applying these different, like this is the structure we're in, and here's the wide open design space that's out there. Like Death Stranding. Like if you played that game, you're walking around with like a refrigerator of boxes on the back. What's really funny is that to a lot of people that felt like, wow, that is such a weird game idea. But if you're in Japan, they pay people to do that. That's a normal job in Japan. Yep.
wow, had no idea.
Yeah, yeah, stacking tons and tons of stuff on your back and just doing deliveries like that. That's a thing. But not over, not outside, not outside Japan. So he just took something that people did and just made a really great game out of it. And that's why like the really crazy alien stuff is there and the baby and all those things.
Mm.
He added all those cool elements to something that was just like that's what people do.
Yeah, I mean, I've maybe got 5 hours into that game and my head was already exploding. So, but now I know
Yeah,
the context behind it. Maybe that will encourage me to play it a little bit more.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so, John, just to round off the interview, would you be able to give us a little sneak peek of what you got lined up for yourself in the future years?
Well, I'm working on a shooter, so I can't say anything about it other than I'm using Unreal 5 and I have a big publisher behind me. So, and everything's been going really great. It's turning out really great. Personally, I have recently in December released Sigil 2, which is my Doom episode 6, which Bethesda has picked up and released on all the consoles and everything. Um, in 2018, I released Sigil 1, which has a Buckethead soundtrack. and that is the 5th episode of the original Doom that Bethesda then took and included in everything. So if you get Doom, the original Doom 1 and 2 on any kind of console, Switch, whatever, then you're going to get Sigil 1 and Sigil 2 with it. So those are personal projects I did on the side, and I am currently working on Hellion, which is a Doom 2 WAD. And then after I do that, I'll be working on a Quake episode. So, and those are just like personal project things.
So not a lot going on then.
Yeah, not that much.
Well, John, thank you so much for your time. For anyone who's attending CasinoBeats Summit, you can catch John's keynote presentation, Bridging Worlds, Nostalgia, Innovation, and the Future, A Journey with John Romero. Thank you once again, John. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.